They say the road calls to you. I say some roads call you to hell. Welcome to the Hollow Stretch, a forgotten section of I-95 through the Appalachian Mountains, where the night shift comes with a price. My name is Micah Vance, and I came here to outrun my past. Instead, I found myself driving straight into a nightmare, hauling a cargo far heavier than steel. There are strange rules to follow out here, and breaking them means more than just getting lost. What's the loneliest stretch of road you've ever traveled? Tell me in the comments below. And if you're brave enough to ride shotgun with me, subscribe to Night Creepypasta Rules and ring that bell. Because on the Hollow Stretch, the road remembers. The run begins now. I used to think the only ghosts that followed me home were the ones from the war. The silent, accusing faces of men I couldn't save. Specters born of a single catastrophic logistics error under my command. That was before I started driving the night shift on the I-95 through the Appalachians, a long, winding ribbon of asphalt so lonely and dark that the other long haulers and I just call it the Hollow Stretch. My best friend, Hank DeWitt, he vanished out here a month ago. They found his rig parked neatly on the shoulder. Engine cold, thermos still half full of coffee, but no sign of Hank. Now I'm driving his route, his rig, holding a sealed, anonymous container with no manifest, no bill of lading, just a greasy, yellow sticky note left on the dash that says, keep moving. No stops after 11:11 p.m. And a strange hand-labeled cassette tape Hank left in the glove box. The tape was titled simply, The Rules. The air in this cab, Hank's cab, is stale, smelling of cold coffee, diesel, and something else beneath it all. Something faint and ancient, like old bones and ozone. Every flicker of headlights in my rearview mirror looks like it's trying to form a face, and every mile marker feels less like a measure of distance, and more like a tick on a clock, counting down to something terrible. My name is Micah Vance. After the army, driving a big rig was the only thing that made sense. The solitude, the discipline of the road, the simple, tangible goal of getting from point A to point B. It was a way to outrun the ghosts of my past. Or so I thought. This run was different. The job came down from night dispatch with an unusual sense of urgency. The usual dispatcher was out, replaced by a woman named Marla Sykes. Her voice on the radio was a calm, professional, no-nonsense baritone. But there was an odd, echoing quality to it. A faint layer of static that seemed to cling to her words no matter how clear the signal. Just a priority run, Micah, she'd said, her voice crackling in my ear. Client wants this container moved from Roanoke to Baltimore. No questions, no peeking. Just keep your wheels turning. You're the best we've got for a solo night run. Flattery and a hazard bonus. A classic combination I should have been wary of. The container itself was wrong. It was a standard 40-footer, but it hummed, a low, almost sub-audible vibration that I could feel through the floor of the cab. A constant, deep thrum that set my teeth on edge. An hour into the drive, deep in the mountains where the radio stations faded into a chorus of hiss, I slotted Hank's cassette into the old player on the dash. The tape was old, the audio warped, but it was Hank's voice, strained, terrified, and interspersed with long, ragged breaths. If you're hearing this, Micah, his voice crackled. It means I didn't make it. It means they gave you my run. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. This road, it's not right. It remembers things. You gotta follow the rules, man. You gotta. Then he listed them. His voice a litany of desperate, superstitious dread. Rule 1. When you see the same rest stop 3 times in one night, don't stop. Don't even slow down. It's a net. It's not real. Rule 2. Never, ever honk your horn between midnight and 4 a.m. The sound, it carries. It's like ringing a dinner bell. Rule 3. If a massive black dog runs alongside your truck for miles without tiring, don't be scared. That's the good boy. That's Server. He's trying to help. Throw a piece of your food out the window. The Hellhound is protecting you from the bone collectors following behind. Rule of 4. If you encounter a roadblock manned by officers in vintage, old-timey uniforms who ask to inspect your soul manifest, show them your family photos. Talk about someone you love. It's the only toll they accept. The tape ended with a sudden, sharp click, leaving me in silence, the hum of the container seeming to grow louder. It was the rambling of a man at the end of his rope, I told myself. Stress, loneliness. But Hank wasn't the type to crack. 2 hours later, deep in the heart of a hollow stretch, a green sign glowed in my headlights. Oak Haven Rest Stop, 1 mile. My bladder twinged, my eyes gritty from fatigue. The thought of hot coffee was a siren song. But the timing felt wrong, too close to the 11:11 p.m. curfew on the note. I drove past the lonely, brightly lit building, a small island of false hope in the ocean of darkness. An hour of winding, hypnotic road passed. Then, another green sign glowed ahead. Oak Haven Rest Stop, 1 mile. Impossible. I hadn't turned around. I hadn't passed any other exits. A cold knot of dread tightened in my gut. I gripped the wheel, my knuckles white, and drove past it again. My eyes locked on the road ahead. 58 minutes later, I saw it again. Oak Haven Rest Stop, 1 mile. The same sign, the same promise of coffee and light. It was a net, Hank had said. A loop. This time, as I approached, I forced myself to look. Under the buzzing fluorescent lights of the rest stop, standing near the vending machines, was a figure, tall, impossibly thin, and shrouded in shadow. It turned its head as my headlights swept past. And though I couldn't see a face, I felt its gaze, a look of profound predatory hunger. I stomped on the accelerator, my heart hammering, and as I blew past the exit for the 3rd time, I glanced in my rearview mirror. The rest stop was gone. There was only the empty, dark road behind me. Breaking free from the spatial loop of the phantom rest stop didn't bring relief. It brought a new, more profound sense of dread. The road was no longer just a road. It was a conscious entity, and it was toying with me. I was a rat in its maze. I tried the CB radio, flipping through the channels, hoping for another voice, another sign of life. All I found was a deep humming static, a sound that seemed to resonate with the low thrum of the container behind me. It was as if the entire stretch of highway was a dead zone, cut off from the real world. I called dispatch. Marla's voice answered, still calm, still professional, but the static clinging to her words seemed thicker now. Everything all right out there, Micah? Your GPS showed you stationary for a while. I hit a recurring detour, I said, my voice tight. Some kind of local traffic loop. I'm clear now. Good to hear, she replied, her tone betraying nothing. Just keep those wheels turning. The client is very particular about the delivery time. She was lying. I knew she was lying. Her calm was more terrifying than any scream. An hour passed in suffocating silence. The only sounds the rumble of my engine and the unnerving hum of my cargo. The forests on either side of the highway were a solid wall of blackness, so dense it seemed to suck the light from my headlamps. Then, from the wooded verge to my right, it appeared. It emerged from the trees not with a crash, but with a fluid, impossible silence. A dog, a massive black dog, the size of a small wolf. Its shaggy fur so dark it seemed to drink the light. It fell into a lope alongside my cab, its long legs eating up the miles with an effortless, supernatural grace. It wasn't panting. It wasn't struggling to keep up. It was just running. Its head was level with my window, and when it turned to look at me, its eyes glowed with a soft, steady amber light. They were not the eyes of a predator. They were the eyes of a guardian. Cerber, the Hellhound. Rule #3. My first instinct was fear, a jolt of pure adrenaline. But Hank's voice from the tape overrode it. Don't be scared. He's trying to help. I fumbled on the passenger seat for the half-eaten roast beef sandwich I'd bought hours ago. My hands were shaking, but I unwrapped it. With a deep breath, I cranked down the window, the roaring wind and the smell of pine and wet earth flooding the cab. I tossed the half sandwich out. The black dog, without breaking stride, leaped gracefully, catching it in its jaws midair, and then fell back into its steady, silent lope beside me. A payment made, a contract accepted. I felt a sudden, urgent compulsion. I looked in my driver's side mirror, then the passenger side one. The road behind me was empty, but then I looked in the large, convex rearview mirror mounted on the hood, the one that showed the wide, distorted view of the road directly behind my trailer. And I saw them, far behind, maybe a quarter of a mile. Two figures had emerged onto the highway from the same woods the dog had come from. They were tall, gaunt, and moved with a strange, disjointed stop-motion gait, as if they were puppets animated by an unseen hand. Even at this distance, I could see that they were carrying what looked like large burlap sacks over their shoulders. The bone collectors. They were walking, their pace slow and patient. But I knew with a certainty that chilled me to my soul that they would not tire. The Hellhound was not chasing me. It was running escort. It was a shield, a buffer between me and the things that were now following. The CB radio crackled to life, a burst of static so loud it made me jump. And through the hiss, a voice, fragmented and weak, but unmistakably Hank's. The cargo. They want the cargo, Micah. The static swelled. No, what do you think? It's empty. It's a trap for... His voice was swallowed by the static again, leaving me alone with the silent running dog, the humming container, and the patient walking nightmares in my mirror. The Hellhound ran with me for almost an hour, a silent, dark sentinel. Then, as the first faint hint of pre-dawn gray began to bruise the eastern sky, it gave me one last look with its amber eyes, and veered off the road, vanishing back into the deep woods as silently as it had appeared. I checked my mirrors. The two walking figures were gone. The truce of the road held. They did not hunt in the light. I drove on, my nerves shredded, my mind a whirlwind of fear and questions. As soon as I hit a stretch of road with cell service, I pulled into a real map-verified truck stop, my hands shaking too much to hold a coffee cup steady. I needed more than Hank's tape. In the cab's small sleeper compartment, I tore through his duffel bag, tucked into an inside pocket. I found it. A small, spiral-bound notebook. His logbook. The first pages were normal trucker's logs. Mileage, fuel, delivery times. But the entries for the hollow stretch were different. They were frantic, filled with paranoid ramblings and hand-drawn maps of the highway that didn't match any official map. He'd marked sections as Loop Zone, Whisper Alley, and Bad Static. He wrote about roadblocks manned by men out of time, and a woman on the dispatch radio, Marla, whose voice seemed to guide him into the dead ends. The final entry was a single, terrifying sentence. The container isn't the cargo. I am. That night, my own dread returned with the setting of the sun. As I drove deeper into the mountains, back into the dead zone of the radio, I rounded a sharp bend and was blinded by a single revolving red light, a roadblock. It blocked both lanes of the interstate. A classic 1950s-style black and white highway patrol cruiser was parked sideways, its single gumball light painting the wet asphalt in slow, rhythmic strokes of blood red. Two officers stood beside it. Their uniforms were vintage, tailored wool, the kind I'd only ever seen in old movies. Rule #4, my heart hammered. The lead officer, tall and imposing, walked towards my window. His face in the eerie red light was unnervingly smooth, his features indistinct, like a worn photograph. He stopped beside my door. "Evening, driver," he said, his voice polite but flat and hollow, like a recording. "Routine soul inspection. We'll need to see your soul manifest." My breath hitched. I remembered Hank's rule, his frantic scrawl in the logbook. Talk about someone you love. It's the only toll they accept. I fumbled for my wallet, my fingers clumsy with fear. I pulled out the worn, creased photo of my wife, the one I always carried. Sarah, taken on our last anniversary. Her smile so bright, it had hurt to look at after she was gone. I held it up to the window. "This is my wife, Sarah," I said, my voice thick with an emotion I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. We met in a little diner outside Fort Bragg. She had a laugh that could make you forget there was anything bad in the world. She loved sunflowers. Her favorite song was I Talked. I told this phantom of the highway all about her, about the life we had planned, the life that had been stolen. The officer listened, his head cocked to one side as if he were trying to remember something. A faint, mournful sigh, like the wind through a lonely pipe, seemed to pass between him and his partner. After a long, agonizing moment, the lead officer gave a single slow nod. "Your cargo is verified," he said, his hollow voice unchanged. "Your tether is strong. You may proceed." He and his partner stepped aside, their movements stiff and formal. They waved me through. I put the truck in gear and slowly drove past them, not daring to look away from the road ahead. After about a quarter of a mile, I risked a glance in my rear-view mirror. The roadblock, the cruiser, the two officers, they were gone. The road behind me was empty and dark. My eyes fell to the passenger seat. Lying on the worn vinyl was a small, old-fashioned silver locket, the kind a woman might have worn in the 1950s. It hadn't been there before. My hands trembling, I picked it up and opened the clasp. Inside, on one side, was a tiny, faded photograph of a smiling young woman I had never seen before. On the other side, a microscopic inscription had been etched into the silver. "Tell them my name, Eleanor. Don't let them forget me." The locket felt heavy in my hand, a relic from a soul a half-century lost on this cursed road. I was no longer just a driver. I was a custodian of last requests, a courier for the dead. The weight of it all was crushing. I now knew with absolute certainty that I was being hunted, and that Marla Sykes, the voice on the radio, was not my dispatcher, but my shepherd, guiding me to the slaughter. I tried to confront her. I got on the CB, my voice hard. "Marla, what the hell is really going on out here? I just got pulled over by ghosts." Her reply was smooth, seamless, a masterclass in gaslighting. "Micah, you sound exhausted. The atmospheric pressure in the mountains can play tricks, and you've been pushing hard since Hank. Maybe you should consider pulling over, getting some rest." She was using my grief, my known fatigue, against me, building a case for my own insanity. She was good, chillingly good. I ignored her advice. I pulled out Hank's hand-drawn map. It was a mess of frantic lines and notes, but one thing stood out: an exit ramp, about 20 miles ahead, that he had circled multiple times. It wasn't on any official map or my GPS. He had labeled it simply, "The Last Exit." I found it just where the map said it would be, a narrow, unlit ramp almost completely overgrown with weeds, peeling off the I-95 into the deep woods. It was a road to nowhere, a road I never would have taken if I wasn't already convinced I was driving through a nightmare. After a mile of bumpy, cracked asphalt, I saw a dim, flickering neon sign ahead. A single word, glowing a sickly green. Eat. It was a ramshackle, time-lost truck stop, a collection of peeling paint and rusted gas pumps that looked like it hadn't seen a new customer since the Eisenhower administration. A sign hanging crookedly over the door read "The Last Exit Diner. Open when we're here." I walked inside. The place was empty, save for a single, wiry old woman behind the counter, wiping it down with a slow, methodical rhythm. She had sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to see more than they should. This was Ruthie Banner. She looked up as I entered, the small bell on the door giving a dead, muffled jingle. "You're Hank's friend," she said. "It wasn't a question. Took you long enough to find this place. Coffee's fresh. or as fresh as it gets. I sat at the counter, the worn vinyl of the stool cooled against my legs. You knew Hank? Knew him? Know him? Time gets a little soupy. Out here on the stretch, she said, pouring a thick black coffee into a heavy ceramic mug. He was a good man, asked too many questions. Got the attention of the ones who don't like questions. The Bone Collectors, I said, the name feeling like a shot of ice on my tongue. Ruthie nodded, her expression grim. They've been walking this road since before it was a road. They don't like folks with strong tethers, strong memories. The ones who love hard. That's a bright, shiny soul to them. She looked at me, her gaze piercing. Like yours, she confirmed everything. The Hellhound, he don't hunt for them, boy. He runs from them, and he warns the ones worth warning. The loops, the roadblocks, this road, she explained, leaning forward, her voice a low whisper. It sometimes forgets where it's supposed to go, gets tangled up, and there are things that live in the tangles. She told me about the container I was hauling. That ain't a delivery, honey. That's a trap, a hungry box, designed to soak up all the bad energy on this road, all the fear and pain. Makes a real tasty meal for the collectors. But they need a living soul, a powerful one too. Turn the key, so to speak, to open the box for them. Then she delivered the final blow. That dispatcher you talked to, she said, her eyes sad now. Marla Sykes. I remember that name. She was a trucker, a tough gal. Got caught in that big 27-car pileup near the state line, 20 years back. The one nobody could explain. They never found all the bodies. She's dead? I asked, my blood running cold. Ruthie shook her head slowly, a look of profound pity on her face. Worse, she ain't alive, honey, and she ain't dead. She's just on the air, a ghost in the radio, making deals with the things in the dark to keep from fading away completely. And she's got a big delivery she's waiting on to pay her dues. You. Leaving the last exit felt like stepping off the last solid piece of ground into a churning black ocean. Ruthie's words had given me the horrifying truth, but the truth offered no comfort, only the cold, stark certainty of my predicament. I was a lure. My rig was the bait, and my dispatcher was a damn ghost, a hungry toll collector for the damned eager to punch my ticket. I climbed back into the cab, the familiar space now feeling like a cage on wheels. The low sub-audible hum from the container behind me seemed to have intensified, a deep, resonant thrum that vibrated through the seat, a hungry, waiting sound. I got back on the I-95, the highway unnaturally empty, a ribbon of asphalt stretching into an oppressive, starless dark. It was time to face the ghost in the machine. I keyed the mic for the dispatch channel. Marla, I said, my voice low and hard, devoid of the usual professional courtesy. Marla Sykes, I know who you are. For a long moment, there was only the sound of humming static. Then, her voice came back, but it was different. The professional veneer was gone, stripped away. What remained was layered, echoing, filled with the hiss of dead air and the cold, hollow rage of a soul trapped between worlds for 2 decades. Took you long enough, Micah. Her voice echoed in the cab, seeming to come from all around me, not just the speaker. Hank was quicker on the uptake, made the game more interesting. But his tether was weak in the end. He gave up. You have so much delicious grief to hold on to. You'll make a much better key. The pile-up Marla. On the state line. That was you, I said, gripping the wheel. A sound that might have been a laugh, but sounded more like grinding glass and static, crackled over the radio. I was a victim just like you, Micah. I was dying on the asphalt, watching the world fade, and they came to me, the collectors. They offered me a deal, a new route, a new job. All I had to do was keep the highway fed. A driver for a driver. A soul for a soul. A fair trade, wouldn't you say? What do you want? I snarled. I want what you're hauling, Micah. Not the box, the energy inside it. The fear. The pain. Your pain. Your guilt over your men. Your grief for your wife. It's been charging the container all night, turning it into a delicious resonant lure. And I want you to open it. Open the box, release the energy, and pay the toll. It will satiate them, and the power released will finally make me whole again. It will pull me out of the static and back into the world. Not gonna happen, I said. The static-laced laugh returned. Oh, Micah, you still think you're driving. You're not driving. You're being driven. And with that, the highway transformed. The headlights of my truck flickered violently. The road ahead, which had been a straight shot, now seemed to twist and warp, the white lines writhing like snakes. The trees on either side leaned in, their branches like grasping, skeletal fingers. The humming from the container intensified, a deafening, soul-shaking drone. My GPS screen dissolved into a skull and crossbones icon before going dark. My phone, which had been on the passenger seat, suddenly burst, the battery erupting in a shower of sparks and acrid smoke. I was cut off, alone, and they were coming. I looked in my rearview mirror. The bone collectors were no longer walking patiently far behind. They were on the road right behind my trailer, their long, gaunt forms running with an impossible loping speed. They were closing the distance, their burlap sacks bouncing on their backs. The faint, dry rattle of bones now audible over the roar of my engine. The Hellhound, Cerber, appeared again, a silent black shadow, materializing at my side. He ran with a new urgency, a desperate, frantic energy, his amber eyes wide with warning. He wasn't an escort anymore. He was a frantic, last-ditch defense. Marla's voice filled the cab, a triumphant, booming narration to my personal apocalypse. The road is ours, Micah. Every mile marker, every patch of asphalt, every forgotten ghost of every crash. They answer to me. There is no escape, only the delivery. The Belhaven rest stop sign appeared directly ahead, not a mile away, but right there. Its lights a blinding, false promise. This time, I didn't have a choice. The steering wheel was ripped from my hands by an unseen force, and the rig veered violently towards the exit ramp. I fought it, my muscles straining against the supernatural force, my tires screaming in protest. With a surge of adrenaline, I managed to wrench the wheel back, keeping the truck on the highway, but I could feel her, fighting me, her ghostly will pressing down on me. Then, ahead, the roadblock materialized out of the darkness. The vintage cruiser, the two officers. But this time, they weren't waiting. They were pulling out, trying to force me off the road, their featureless faces now contorted into silent, screaming masks. Their single red gumball light pulsed like a dying heart, and the light seemed to actively slow my truck, the air becoming thick and heavy as I approached, like driving through molasses. Honk the horn, Micah. Hank's voice, a desperate, static-laced scream, burst from the CB. Break the rule. It's a dinner bell, but it's the only sound that's yours. Make a sound she can't control. It was insane. It was a trap, but it was the only option I had left. I reached up and pulled the cord for the air horn. The blast was deafening, a raw, powerful human sound that shattered the supernatural silence. It was after midnight. I had rung the dinner bell. The effect was instantaneous. The phantom police cruiser flickered and dissolved, its illusion broken by the sheer mundane power of the horn blast. But Marla's enraged shriek on the radio was terrifying. You fool, you've invited them all. I looked in my mirrors again. It wasn't just the two bone collectors anymore. Dozens of them were emerging from the woods on both sides of the highway, drawn by the sound. Tall, thin figures of shadow and bone, all turning their empty gazes towards my truck, all beginning to run. The Hellhound, Cerber, let out a deep, rumbling howl that was both a challenge and a cry of despair. He was hopelessly outnumbered. The desperate, high-speed chase began. It was a battle fought with an 80,000-pound rig against a legion of nightmares, on a stretch of highway that was actively trying to kill me. All while the ghost of a dead trucker laughed in my ear. The road twisted, the loops returned, phantoms of past accidents, burning cars, overturned trucks, flickered in and out of existence on the shoulder. It was a desperate, terrifying race to the dawn, a race I knew I was losing. The collectors were getting closer, their long, shadowy fingers reaching for the humming, hungry box that I was chained to. The air horn's blast had been a double-edged sword. It had shattered the immediate illusion of the phantom roadblock, but in its place, I had summoned an army. The highway behind me was no longer just a dark road. It was a moving tide of silent, grasping figures, a legion of bone collectors pouring from the woods, their numbers growing with every mile. They were no longer just loping. They were sprinting, a sea of disjointed stop-motion nightmares, their shadowy forms flowing over the asphalt like spilled ink. The Hellhound, Cerber, was a blur of black fur and amber-eyed fury, weaving between them, a valiant but hopelessly overwhelmed guardian, trying to break up the pack, to give me precious seconds. Marla's voice on the radio was a torrent of triumphant, static-laced rage. "You see, Micah, you see the power of this road. They were all here, waiting, all the lonely souls, all the forgotten travelers. They just needed a proper invitation. You have rung the bell for your own feast." The highway itself was now her primary weapon. It bucked and twisted beneath me. Illusory exits appeared and vanished in my headlights. The ghosts of past accidents became almost solid. I had to swerve violently to avoid the shimmering, transparent wreckage of a 1970s station wagon, seeing for a horrifying instant the pale, screaming faces of a family inside. The lines on the road writhed, attempting to braid themselves together, to guide me into the guardrail, into the dark, waiting trees. My knuckles were white on the wheel, my muscles burning with the strain of fighting a road that had become a living, malevolent entity. I remembered Hank's logbook, the hand-drawn maps. I'd spent hours staring at them back at the truck stop, trying to burn them into my memory. He had marked one section with a thick red X and a single scrawled word: Anchor. It was an old decommissioned stretch of the original U.S. Route 11, the pre-interstate highway that the I-95 had replaced. It ran parallel to the main highway for a few miles before hitting a dead end at a collapsed bridge over a deep ravine. Hank had written, "The old road remembers more. The connection is stronger there." I didn't know if he meant it was a trap or an opportunity, but I was out of options. The collectors were beginning to reach the trailer, their long, shadowy fingers scraping against the metal, a sound like dry leaves skittering across a tombstone. I saw the turnoff ahead, almost completely swallowed by the forest, just as Hank's map had shown. It wasn't an exit, it was a scar. With a prayer to a god I hadn't spoken to in years, I wrenched the wheel, leaving the relatively smooth asphalt of the interstate. The rig groaned in protest as we hit the old, cracked concrete of the original highway. The moment my tires touched the old road, the atmosphere changed. The cacophony of Marla's voice and the surrounding whispers intensified, the air growing thick and heavy. But the landscape grew quieter, more ancient, more sorrowful. This road was saturated with a deeper, older energy. I had left the main hunting ground and entered the lair. The road ended just as the map had predicted, at a sheer dead end. A massive, collapsed stone bridge lay in ruins, the ravine below a pit of absolute blackness. I slammed on the brakes, the rig jackknifing with a scream of tortured metal, the headlights illuminating the abyss. I was trapped. The army of bone collectors poured onto the old road behind me, their forms becoming clearer, more defined in this place of concentrated power. They slowed, their hungry, featureless gazes fixed on the humming container. Serba, the Hellhound, skidded to a halt between me and the approaching horde. Its body braced, a low, guttural growl rumbling in its chest. It was making its last stand. Marla's voice filled the cab, no longer triumphant, but with a tone of imminent, ecstatic completion. End of the line, Micah. Perfect. You brought the offering directly to the altar. The static around her voice receded, and for a moment her voice was almost clear, almost human, filled with a desperate 2-decade-long hunger. Now perform the final delivery. Open the box. Let it feed on the energy of this place of so much sorrow. The offering will be immense. It will be enough to satisfy them. And finally, suddenly, set me free. I looked at the humming container. The hungry box, Ruthie had called it. My salvation, Marla claimed, was to open it. But I remembered Hank's last frantic entry in his logbook. The container isn't the cargo. I am? I looked at the horde of collectors, their skeletal fingers twitching. I looked at the brave, doomed Hellhound holding them at bay. And I looked at the abyss where the bridge used to be. The box wasn't meant to be opened here. It was a vessel. And Marla didn't want the energy of the place. She wanted the energy of a soul to open it. My soul. The standoff was a frozen tableau of supernatural horror. The silent, waiting horde. The defiant, growling Hellhound. The humming, hungry container. And the ghost on the radio, whispering promises of release that I knew were lies. Open the box, Micah. It's the only way. Be the key. Hank's words echoed in my mind. It's a trap for who? For the driver. Ruthie's words followed. It soaks up the bad energy, but needs a living soul to turn the key. The box didn't just collect ambient energy. It targeted and absorbed the focused, potent energy of a soul defined by loss and guilt. My soul. Opening it would be like slitting my own spiritual throat, offering myself up on a platter. The collectors began to advance again, their patience wearing thin. Serba met the first one, a whirlwind of black fur and righteous fury. There was a silent explosion of shadow and amber light, and both creatures, the ancient demon and the spectral guardian, dissolved into nothingness. The Hellhound had bought me my last chance, trading its existence for a few precious seconds. There was only one option left. Not defense, not surrender. Defiance. You want your delivery, Marla. I yelled into the dead cab, my voice raw. You want this box opened? Then you can come and get it. I slammed the truck into reverse. The engine roared. The tires screamed. Marla's voice on the radio turned from persuasion to a shriek of pure, confused rage. What are you doing, you fool? That's not the protocol. I wasn't aiming for the collectors. I was aiming for the source of the road's dark energy. A place Hank had marked on his map, with a single ominous drawing of a lightning-struck tree. It stood at the very edge of the collapsed bridge. An ancient, gnarled oak, centuries old, its branches like twisted, arthritic arms reaching for the sky. It was a hanging tree from a forgotten time, a place saturated with more grief and violent death than any other spot on this cursed highway. It was the road's dark heart. I spun the wheel hard, jackknifing the trailer with a deafening screech of metal. The massive container swung around, a 40-foot steel battering ram, and smashed directly into the ancient oak tree. The impact was cataclysmic. Wood and metal screamed, but the container didn't just dent. It burst open, its seals rupturing with a sound like a thunderclap. And Hank was right. It was empty. There was nothing inside but a swirling, humming void. But a trap, once sprung, must catch something. The box, this psychic vessel, was now open at the most potent nexus of spiritual energy on the hollow stretch. It created a vacuum, A spiritual vortex. It didn't release something. With a sound like the universe taking a giant breath, it began to inhale. It didn't pull at me. My tether to the memory of my wife, the love I had spoken of to the phantom patrolman, it was my anchor. My soul manifest was clear and strong. The box couldn't take me. So it took the next most powerful, most active, and most untethered soul on the highway. No, Marla shrieked over the radio, her voice no longer a powerful broadcast, but a thin, terrified, electronic wail. No, not me. I'm the dispatcher, not the cargo. I could feel it, her ghostly form, her very consciousness, which was woven into the fabric of the radio waves and the asphalt of the highway, was being pulled, stretched, and violently ripped from its ethereal anchor. She was being collected. Her own trap, the one she had used for 2 decades, had turned on her. Her voice was sucked from the radio, replaced by a final, echoing burst of static. And then, for the first time all night, blessed, absolute silence. The bone collectors, their master, their purpose, their very reason for being on this road tonight, gone in an instant, simply stopped. They looked at the broken, empty box, then at me, and then, one by one, they faded, dissolving back into the shadows of the woods, their hunt over. The oppressive, heavy atmosphere of the hollow stretch lifted, like a fever breaking. The road was just a road again. The woods were just woods. At dawn, a state trooper found me, sitting by my jackknifed rig, staring at the shattered remains of an empty shipping container. I told him a story about falling asleep at the wheel, of swerving to avoid a deer. He saw the exhaustion in my eyes, the deep, profound weariness of a man who had been to hell and back, and he didn't question it. I quit driving that day. I sold the rig. I moved to a small town, far from any interstate, far from the mountains. I try to live a normal life. I try to forget the sound of a phantom dog running beside my window, the sight of men made of shadow, the feel of a hungry box humming behind my head. Most days I succeed, but sometimes, late at night, when I'm driving in my car, I'll fiddle with the radio, looking for some music, and sometimes, in the brief, whispering hiss of static between the stations, I hear it, a woman's faint, familiar, layered voice, trapped and furious, filled with an eternity of cold, echoing rage, whispering a single chilling phrase, awaiting dispatch, awaiting new driver. I quickly turn the radio off, my hands trembling, but I know. Marla isn't gone. She's just been collected. She's the new ghost in the machine, a permanent part of the signal, a warning trapped in the dead air of every highway in the country. She's forever on the air, forever waiting for her next delivery.